What's up, bass players? Ryan here from BassMatter, taking you through the core bass learning program. In this video, we're going to take a look at the major scales and the minor scales, start giving you some ideas of how these are used, why they are the most widely popular tonalities that we have in music that we listen to today, and how you can start grooving on them right away. Let's get to work. The major and the minor scale. Oh, I'm sure you've heard that referenced out there before, whether it be a chord or a scale or something. You've heard about major and minor, no doubt before, somewhere. Let's go ahead and talk about those two things for a particular second. In modern music, and when I say modern music, I mean Western music of the last 400 years, right? European music where we established notes. We talked about A440 in one of the previous videos. We started getting some standards created and some notes that were being more universal and shared across all the different musical platforms out there. Major and minor tonalities make up the music that we listen to today. You put on the radio and you are listening to a combination of major and minor sounds, and they sound a specific way. And we'll start working on some ear training stuff later to help you begin identifying major and minor tonalities. But the easiest place to start for playing bass is by playing the actual shapes themselves so you can start hearing them. One of the best places to start is to go on the website, make sure you get the scales chart. It's totally free. Go grab it right away. It's going to be a great visualization to help you learn how to play the actual shapes themselves. Now, before we jump in, let me point out that on those charts there, each little dot has a number, okay? That number is referred to as what's called a scale degree, and that's something that we're going to be referencing a lot the further down this video series we get, where I say play the first, play the third. This is going to be a chord where we are playing the 1, the 3, and the major 7. So make sure that you start paying attention towards those numbers on there called scale degrees, and we'll start using those through our playing as we start investigating what's called Nashville numbers. We explore the furthering details of the diatonic order and how it relates to our playing and more. But for starters today, grab the chart and let's take a look at how to play those two shapes. So the first one on the chart is the major scale, okay? Now how to read this chart is pretty simple. Although it may look like it's starting on a certain string, it's the shape that's the important thing to keep in mind. You want to play that shape. So pick somewhere on your bass and call it number 1. And then as you're looking at that chart, go to number 2. And then go to number 3, and so on and so forth as we go through that shape. It's the major scale. Let's start off with hearing the whole major scale and see what major tonalities sound like. Here is a D major scale. Sound familiar? Something you sang in choir back in the day? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Oh, I'm a horrible singer. I'm sorry you had to suffer through that. But you'll probably hear me sing some more throughout this video series. The major scale, that shape right there, is going to be one of the biggest shapes that you use in almost all of your playing. And so much of the stuff that we're going to be talking about further down the road of modes and different tonalities are all coming from that one particular shape. So make sure you spend a lot of time mastering that one shape. Now, something to be aware of in the first place is that that's not the only way to play the major scale. There are a lot of different ways to do it. What we are specifically trying to accomplish is playing a 7-note scale, which is the major scale, a diatonic scale, and we have 1 through 7 are all different notes, and then 1 and 8 are the same note but an octave apart. So number 1, if I start here on the 3rd fret on my A string, that note is C, and I'm going to go C, D, E, F, G, A, B. That's my 7th note. Now I go to my 8th note, which is my C up here as well. Same as the one for where I started. Now that's going to be called the octave, and both of them can be referred to as the tonic. And the tonic is a word that you'll hear me use again, which is referring to basically number 1. So number 1 is the tonic, okay? And then there's the mediant and the dominant and the subdominant, and there's a bunch of different names for all these scale degrees we'll cover later. But that first scale, the C, or any of the major scales, but C major scale, okay? It's one particular shape. There's a lot of debate out there. Should you start that scale on your number 2 finger over here and then try to use your pinky so you have good economy of motion? We talked about that in the last lesson. Don't worry about so much the economy of motion and the best way for forming with your left hand. Just start memorizing that shape, okay? Lots of different ways to play it. Okay? Lots of different ways to play the same shape, and we'll talk about those later, but start memorizing that scale shape right away. The second one is the natural minor, and that one is also going to be an enormous shape that we are pulling a lot of information from. Let's listen to that one as well. Certainly sounds different, certainly sounds minor-y. And as you start playing those two shapes, you're going to be able to hear the difference between major tonalities and minor tonalities. Now, on that chart, on the natural minor shape, which is the one on the top right of that chart, you'll see it says 1, 2, flat 3. So it still has the number 3, but it's different from the major scale because the major scale chart simply says 3. The natural minor scale says flat 3. So make sure that you start paying attention and calling it what it is. Minors are 1, 2, flat 3. And the natural minor continues on and goes 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, then back to my 8. Make sure that you really work on those two shapes. They're super important. There's a lot of information that comes out of those two things there, and we're going to be referencing those a lot. So make sure you get the chart, that's totally free, and start working on those top two shapes, the major scale and the natural minor shape, as far as modes are concerned. And that's one of the things I see a lot of people excited about is modes. Modes are, don't get me wrong, very, very, very powerful. And these two scales are actually modes. So if you know what modes are, then these are 2 of the 7 modes. If you don't have a clue what modes is basically a shape of music. And that major scale is called the Ionian mode. And the second shape is the natural minor, and that is the Aeolian shape. So 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 8. So that's going to be that particular shape right there. So with these two, we get to identify tonality, we get to hear the differences between major and minor, we get to really investigate with our ears how something sounds major and minor. And as you start listening to music, start paying attention to see if you can hear some of those great different tones in music and start saying, huh, that sounds major or that sounds minor. A lot of people never really think to use their ears to identify tonalities. We use different descriptions, right? Major and minor tones are the things that make music sound emotional, okay? And there's another tonality too called a diminished tonality, and that one's like the Jaws type of theme out there. But how important is tonality to music? Well, let me give you a crazy example. Let's say you're watching a scary movie, right? And there's the girl on the couch watching TV, eating popcorn, and the bad guy's behind her, and he's coming at her slowly with a knife from the curtain behind her. What is usually going to be the music that is supporting that particular scene? It's going to be something probably scary. More of a diminished tonality, right? So as we start seeing, and just imagine if we had the Care Bear Countdown as the backing track or the theme for that particular part of the scary movie. It wouldn't work. It would totally fall on its face. Tonality plays a big role. It can bring out particular emotions. It can make you happy. It can make you sad. It can make you concerned. It can sound very curious, very suspicious, very worrisome, very satisfying, very, very pleasant. Tonalities are a big deal. How about this? If I play this, it doesn't necessarily sound very good. But if I just simply reverse that, now I have a nice what's called a resolve to that particular tone. So now it sounds okay. There it is. Finally, they finished that horrible part of the song. Now I can get back to what I'm supposed to be doing. So tonalities play a big role. Major tonalities, minor tonalities, diminished tonalities, really a big part of the music that we listen to today. So my challenge to you is to work on memorizing those two shapes. Get them down so you can play them everywhere on the fretboard. Make sure you can play them everywhere. You can play them comfortably. You can play them confidently. You don't have any worries about them. You don't have any questions about them. You know where the numbers are. You know how to get from 1 to 3, 1 to major 7, 1 to 5, 1 to flat 3, and you have some different ways. And that takes us into our next lesson, which is how to start grooving and making songs out of major scales and minor scales. How can we take something as simple as this and make it a sweet song? That's all I got for this lesson, guys. Ryan here, signing off from BassMatter. I look forward to seeing you at the next lesson. Don't forget to find us online. Find us online on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Find us on Instagram. Like us on Google+. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Like this video. Tell a friend, and we'll see you at the next lesson. Ryan here, signing off.